Hello. How are y'all doing today? See, a few of you are on here. Oh, I think it's just my computer. It's taking a little bit more time to load how many people are on here. But if you're here, please feel free to say hello in the chat. There should be a button down at the bottom of the screen where you can, chat with me. Hey, Justin. If you have any questions too, I please encourage you to put those in the chat now, just so I don't miss them. Know to kind of make sure I touch on those topics. Don't you can raise your hand if you want, but I prefer if you just put the comments in the chat. I feel like it's more democratic that way. Yeah, let me know how you're doing too. I'm just going to wait a few more minutes just for more people to get in here before we get started. What you might want to do if you're here is just pull up or print out. It's probably better if you print it out, but either way should work. The worksheets that I gave with you, because we are going to go over those one by one, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. So just have those handy if you want, or I'll put them up on the screen. You can watch them there. Either works. Thought I would film today from my living room. I just got my couch maybe about 2 weeks ago, I think. So I thought I would film it here. Plus, it's like late at night here. It's like 8 o'clock. So I like to do a lot of work in my office with my brick wall behind me, but sometimes in the dark, it just isn't as friendly as I want it to be. So I thought I would do it here. That's funny. It's okay, Sherry. Yeah, I don't even know how to answer raised hands. I always have to figure out how to do that. So just put it in the chat. And we'll check the chat, periodically to answer your questions, see how you're feeling, for sure. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jade. You had a question. I'm reading in the chat. Aiming for a new job and career path, so wondering how that fits with what's going on in the stars in March. Yeah, I can definitely answer that. I mean, March is definitely going to be, especially April, I think, is probably when most of it's going to happen, but definitely a good time to step into the new, do something new chapters, and to really have a new job or career path start to solidify. And I think this month, which we'll talk about in a minute, is definitely going to be a lot about getting rid of the old before the new can start to flourish, perhaps. So, yeah. So definitely, I think that's possible, Jade. Maybe more so in April, you'll start to feel that. But I think now you'll see the tides turning in a very big way to help support you in some different direction. Yeah, Aquarius and Taurus rising, Sherry. That's interesting because Mars and Venus are going to be in both those signs this month, making things interesting. Of course, Uranus, too, in Taurus. The year will be a lot more exciting for you, I would say, definitely. Maybe you feel a little bit more restless. Maybe some sudden and unexpected things come up. Maybe you do something sudden or unexpected. So I definitely feel like with those alignments you have, Sherry, there will be more movement than there has been in years past. Awesome. Maybe I'll give it just a few more minutes, 3 more minutes. I hope that's okay with you all. How's my sister doing? And new baby? I already have a niece. She's 2 now, but my sister just had my son had a son who's my nephew, and he's great. Yeah, he's great. It's so funny how different both the kids are, which confirms for me that our personalities are not just what we get from our parents, but also, of course, I think astrology has a lot to do with it. Because someone asked how my nephew is. He's got a lot of planets in Scorpio, born during that crazy Venus retrograde in Scorpio last year. So he's a little bit quieter than my niece, loves to be held, hates being alone, but very cute. Yeah, my sister's doing great. She goes back to work this week after maternity leave, so I have to check in with her and see how that's been. Someone else raised their hand, Christine. I appreciate the gesture, but just if you have a question, just add it in the chat. If I don't get to it in the chat, then maybe you can raise your hand, or there's a Q&A box. You can add it in there, but I prefer when I teach for it to be, very democratic. I don't really see myself as an authority figure at all, so just throw it in there. All right, 1 more minute. Start at 5 minutes past. If you just joined and you got any questions, put your questions in the chat. Yeah, so I can get to them and make sure I cover that in the next hour. Christine asked, I have Mars and Capricorn in the 5th house, part of a grand Earth trine. How will this Pluto, Saturn, and South Node affect me? Well, it's definitely, first of all, it depends the degree your Mars is at. Is it early degree or is it late degree? Because if it's around 20 degrees, 20 to 25, maybe I might even give you 15 to 25. Count that a pretty big orb. Okay, so all right, it's 20 degrees. That's where the Saturn-Pluto thing is happening. So it's going to change a lot. Definitely the way you do things, the way you act, initiate things is going to have to change, take a different approach than maybe you would otherwise. Also, Capricorn always career stuff, although what house it's in could change things a bit. But you may have to change the way you do things to get what you want, to put your career in the right place. That could come there. Yeah, do you have Saturn and Pluto natally? Conjunct? Do you have them conjunct natally? Yeah, I like it. I mean, I typically like trines a little bit more than I do like squares, for sure. Oh, okay. They're not conjunct. I get it, but they're trine each other, trine Mars. Oh, that's like an interesting little like connection you've got there between all the planets. I was like, that could actually make you pretty good at doing things, making things happen. I don't know. I like to think Saturn conjunct Pluto resets things for the better. So, yeah, Venus opposing Pluto, that could be a little hard for relationships, though. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, Sat. I think I've met you before. Your name sounds familiar. Yeah, maybe just a few housekeeping things, thanks to Sat. Yeah, once this is done, everyone will get a copy of the recording. So if you have to go to bed or you have to leave early, you got other things going on, totally fine. You will get the recording sent through my online store. I try to do it soon after this recording, but sometimes it takes me about a day. So you may not get the recording until a day after we do this. I'll try to get it to you sooner, but you will get the recording. I'll try my best to make sure that you also get the PDF included. Some people didn't get the PDF. Part of that is because my online store only lets me include one attachment, either the PDF or the video, and so I had to choose which one, but maybe this time I'll try to work around that in some way. So hopefully you'll get both the video and the PDF updated after this. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you have your worksheets, feel free to have them in hand, to write notes on them on the side, but I am going to bring these worksheets up on the screen and go through them. Typically, what I like to do is to start off maybe the first 5 minutes just giving you like a brief synopsis of the month in my own words and terms, what that is. And then I'm going to go through each of the worksheets. I've changed my webinars quite a bit, so if you've been with me in the past, I'm doing them a little bit differently. I'm trying to organize them by the moon phases because to me, the moon, maybe it's because I'm a Cancer rising, is one of the most important things to help us know when to do things, when not to do things, when things that we do will have the best impact. So that's why I like to follow the moon if you want to make things happen in your life that are big. So I'm doing this organizing the webinar by the moon phases, the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the third quarter moon. Also, one thing I've done a little bit differently, as you can see in these handouts that you all should have received, is that I'm actually going to do by not only the moon phases, by what sign the moon is in between the moon phases, so you can kind of get an idea of how things will change over time. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go at. Anytime, questions, drop them in the chat. Where do I want to start? I'm like, do I want to bring the chart up on the screen? Well, maybe I should bring the chart up on the screen in order to go through some of this, even though it's going to make my face really small, which is sad. But sometimes it helps when I can get the charts up. Let me share. Okay, so this is what you all should have received. Let's hide this sidebar right here. I am going to start with this new moon. maybe I'll start with the past. I don't want to go too far back to the past, but I think it's important in order for you to get the story so far to figure out how we ended up here. So I think what I am going to go back to, I always like to go back to this time, but I do always like to go back to about the time Saturn was in Scorpio about 6 years ago, around there. The reason why I do like to follow Saturn, especially when I do my horoscopes and when I do my videos, is because Saturn to me is like the keeper of time. Because it's a bridge between the fast-moving planets, which move very, very quickly, and the slow-moving planets, which take years in order to move or change. And so Saturn, to me, has a lot to do with some of the larger trends in the background, but that are actually kind of also in the present and to control the way time functions. So I do want to go back to that. Maybe what might be interesting, of course, is when Saturn was in Libra and Scorpio, there could definitely have been an ending of a cycle, maybe about 5 or 6 or so years ago, when you realized there was something in your life that you'd been doing for a while that maybe needed to change, maybe wasn't right, maybe needed to work out. Maybe you were realizing, hey, I don't know what I'm about to go into. And this is a very simple version. I don't think it came to us like this at the time, but maybe there was somewhere inside about 6 years ago, we realized, I don't know where I'm meant to go yet, but I can't stay here. There's something that is not right about the current place that I'm in my life. I do tie that back to Saturn and Scorpio, just because Scorpio is the sign of change. It is the sign of endings and beginnings in a lot of ways, and it is the sign of deep soul searching. So when Saturn was in Scorpio 6 years ago, there's a part of us that may have realized there's something that's not right in my life. I don't want this anymore, or I thought I wanted this and I don't want this, or it's being taken from me and I can't have it, that we've been trying to work out. After that happened, about 3 years after that, which I guess would have been about 3 years ago, Saturn then moved into Sagittarius and said, okay, now that you don't want this old thing or can't have this old thing that you thought you wanted, or something's changing or ending on you, it's time to formulate a new life, to formulate a new identity, to do things differently, with Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter, being the sign of something new, different, and expansive that you have not done before. So I think that's a lot of what we've been trying to figure out for the past few years of our life. I can't stay where I was, but I don't know where I'm supposed to go yet, and I got to do something new and different that I haven't done before. I think that's what you're trying to figure out. Last year was that in-between time, I want to say, in between the old life and in between the new life. That's because we had Uranus and Chiron. Here's Chiron in Aries currently, Uranus and Taurus at the time of this new moon, but they dipped into these two signs. Chiron moved into Aries, 0 degrees, Uranus moved into Taurus, 0 degrees, and then they went backwards. So we were like half in the new, half in the old. Jupiter was in Scorpio at that time last year too, also making things very deep, very intense, and very tumultuous. I think last year we realized my life has to change. I have to move forward in some new direction. I think I know what new thing I want to do, but I'm not entirely sure. What is this new thing? Do I really want this? Is this really going to work? And I think last year could have been very, very tumultuous. And I think what happens is that we get to this year with the solar eclipse around Capricorn, with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening, and we start to hone in on all of these new things that were up in the air that we weren't sure about. Do we really want this? Do we not? Is this going to work? We start to hone in on something in January of this year and begin to start to focus more and more towards that, where it's not just a lot of options, but now it's 1 or 2 options for our future. That we're really beginning or really need to commit to in some way. And I think what happened a lot of this year, these first few months, I mean, where are we now? We're in March. We're 2 months in. I think now we've got our options narrowed down, and we're starting to, because sometimes Capricorn narrows things down, what the solar eclipse was, and forces us to focus, especially with Saturn there in that sign. And so now that we've narrowed things down and we're starting to move in that direction, I think with a lot of these planets now changing, especially with Uranus and Chiron moving back into Aries and Taurus, where they were a little bit of last year, we're starting to solidify and hold on to more of this new life and to get more of our footing in what it is that we need to do next and how we need to do it. And I think that's kind of where we come into this month, where we realize here, I can't go back to my old life. 6 years ago was a distant memory. Your life is so different and you have to move forward in the future. And I think we're the closest that we've ever been at this point in time to having something new and different kind of manifest. And I think we realize that. I don't know if we're on the precipice. I don't know if that's the right way to see it, but we're in this new territory. We're in this new place. And then we come to this new moon in Pisces, which is what this chart is for on the screen, and we realize, good, I'm in a new place. Maybe it was hard to get here. Maybe I'm not sure if this is really what I want. But now I'm here. And now that I'm here, I have to go back with this new moon in Pisces to a bunch of old things, to review the past, to let go of the past, to make sense of the past, to wipe the past out so that I can step into some new identity that I've been formulating for quite some time, feeling much better. And so I think we're kind of in between worlds, but this is like the last time we're going to be in between worlds, if that makes sense, before we fully are in the new. I know if you've been watching me for a while, for a few months, maybe even a year now, I think you might have heard me, especially if you watch some of my dailies. I think you hear me over and over again say, it's time to kick the past. You got to kick the past. You got to let it go. And I think for the past few months, we've been trying to do that. Like we really just want to let go of this tumultuous time of change, of up and down, of soul searching that's been going on, and we want to move into the new. But for some reason in the past few months, it's just been really hard for us to do that. Every time we think we're in the new, we get dragged backwards into something old one more time. And we think we're going to do it. Okay, I'm really going to make this new thing happen. And then something else comes up that stops us from moving forward. And this new moon in Pisces that's going to happen here, March 6, 2019, you always got to check the date and the time of your charts. And once we get to this new moon in Pisces says no more of this waffling, no more of this going back and forth, no more of one step in the new and one step in the old. You have to get rid of this junk that is no longer serving you, that has been weighing you down. You have to clear it all out so that you can move forward. And the good thing about this time at this new moon is that we're not just going back to the old to clear things out, to get dragged back down in old drama. Instead, we have a better idea with more clarity. It's kind of a weird thing to say with Mercury retrograde or about to go retrograde. But now we're in a better spot, because even though there's still some old things that need to be cleared out and dealt with, at this new moon, we're in a better place because Mars now is in Taurus saying, you made your decision. You've done your soul searching. You know what you need to do, and you need to hold true to that. And you can't back out now. You can't back out. So this new moon in Pisces, we're at a weird spot where we've committed, or you need to commit to some new life and some new direction. And we're more in the new now than we were in the old. Last year, we were kind of like stuck in the past in some weird in-between space. And ever since January, it's like, no, the old is gone. You're in the new. You've created this new life. And now that you're in the new, you need to hold tight, stay true to it, and you need to get rid of all this other junk that's kind of weighing you down. And so that's where we are now. Another reason why I like this spot too is because now that we are more in the new than in the old, we can make decisions and clear out the past from a place of more strength, from a place of more confidence. We want to think of Taurus as being the sign of confidence, especially with Uranus and Taurus, Mars and Taurus kind of pulling us the opposite of 6 years ago. 6 years ago, Jupiter Saturn was in Scorpio. And now we've got all these, and then Jupiter was there last year. And now for the first time in a long time, we've got 2 planets in Taurus, the opposite sign of Scorpio, saying, all this crap that's been going on for the past 6 years, no more. This needs to stop. This needs to end. We got to pick something. We got to settle on it. We got to commit. We got to move towards it. And I really do. I think this is going to be the month that's going to help you to clear out all this old stuff that's been holding you back, and for you to do it from a place of much more strength and of much more confidence than ever before. The way I like to think of it, I don't know if some of you watched me in December, but there was a full moon, I think it was a new moon in December, that I gave an analogy about that. And I said, this new moon in Sagittarius, I think was what it was. And I said, this new moon in Sagittarius is like you're saying farewell. It's like you're leaving a job, or you're leaving a city, to study abroad, to go to a new place, to do something you've never done before. Well, to circle back on that metaphor, it's like we did that in December. We left someplace we were familiar with to go on some new journey, and now we get to this new moon in Pisces. We've been away in this new land, this new place for 3 months, 2 months, 3 months. We've been at this job for 2 months, 3 months, and then all of a sudden we realize, I got to take a trip home to see family. It's been 3 months. I should probably check in. Oh man, I've been at this new job for 3 months, but I forgot something at my old job. I left something on my desk I need to go get. Or, I should probably say thank you to my boss, or I just want to drop in and see how things are going. And so I feel like it's kind of this time with this new moon in Pisces where we're doing the new, but we're coming back home, or we're coming back to revisit some old things. And now that we're revisiting old things, it's nice to go back and tie them up, but we realize we can't revert back to the past. So I like to use that analogy of maybe like a student studying abroad or for a year or something, and then coming back home after 3 months to visit family, and the family wants to do things the same way. You know, well, remember before you left on this trip, maybe even before you went to college when you were 18, we were doing all this stuff. And you return as the student back to your parents' place, and you're like, oh, but I've been living in France for 3 months. My life is totally different. I'm a different person now. I've experienced things I've never experienced before. I can't go back to what I was. I can't go back to this old way. I can't pretend like everything is the same when everything has changed. And so I think that's the spot that we're at right now. We're realizing I'm in this new life, whether I like it or not, I got to go there. It's what I need to do at this time. And now I got to go back to tie up old things, but I can't do things from the past in the same way. I got to do them differently because now I'm a different person with a different set of circumstances. Okay, and that's going to set us up for most of the month, in which we're also going to have Mars in a square with Venus. So a lot of retooling of relationships are going to be huge this month, and money too, but mostly relationships. And that's because now that we are changing and we know we're changing and we're committing more to that change, we now have to go back to the past, retool our relationships, retool our money, not only with that Mars square Venus, but also with the full moon in Libra, a Venus ruled sign, one of two that are going to happen in the next 2 months. We also got to go back to the past, work with our relationships from the past, old relationships, old money situations, and say, hey, now that I'm different, now that I'm coming from a much stronger place, a much more secure place than I was a few months ago, now we got to change some things up. Things can't continue. And that could be hard for other people and could be hard to arrange your money to work with this new vision with the Mars square Venus. Could be very dynamic too. There could be a lot of opportunity there, a lot of excitement, a lot of energy going on as well, but could also be a lot of interesting conversations with Mercury retrograde too with other people about, wait a second, this is what's happening. This is where things are going. This is how you're changing. So I think there could be a lot coming up with relationships and money, rearranging those things to fit to some new version of you, and other people not understanding or trying to understand, being a little slow to understand what exactly is coming next. That's going to take most of it. Okay, and I think that's going to happen really for most of the month until the very end, March 26th. And I think on March 26th comes the very end of the month. That's when Venus is going to move into Pisces, and things are going to smooth out a little bit. People are going to become more understanding in a lot of ways, but it's just the meantime that it could just require a little bit of retooling. And I think what we're trying to do during most of the month with that Mars square Venus is take this vision now that we've seen of this new life, this little glimpse of our potential, and I think we're trying to pull that down into reality. I think as I was preparing for this, I had a vision, a little metaphor for this Mars and Taurus square Venus, if you can see it right here, square Venus and Aries. Taurus is an earth sign. Venus is in Aquarius, rules the heavens, the sky, and I just see Mars and Taurus, this hand reaching up from the earth, pulling down heaven, trying to bring heaven to earth. This is my dream. Aquarius is the sign of your hopes and dreams, your goals, your wishes. And Taurus is the sign of your practical reality, making things real, making things happen. And so I feel like there's a chance where we're starting to really try to make our dreams a reality according to a new life, a new reality, a new set of circumstances, and really wipe out, obliterate maybe, a scary word, but obliterate the old, which is kind of where we are. And I think we're trying to work that out this month. And I think with Mercury retrograde here for most of this month, maybe we don't think we know, but we know. It's like one of those things where you don't know, but you do know what is really going on. I think in our mind, we want to deny that this is happening. Maybe we don't want to admit that certain things are going on. But I think internally, spiritually, intuitively, we know this is the end of an era. This is the end of a chapter. There are things that got to readjust in a big way, especially with planets, 2 big planets about to change signs. Chiron already did. Uranus will by the time this new moon starts. I think we're realizing our life is going to be totally different than it was about 8 years ago, especially because that's how long Chiron and Uranus were in those old signs. Things are very different than what they were 8 years ago, especially 6 years ago. And now we got to get all of us on board and not just part of us. to move forward, okay? So that's where we are. Now I'm going to go over a little bit more of the technical stuff now that I've given you more of my idea of what's going to happen on what days, what that means. I'm going to get a little bit technical here with this new moon in Pisces in particular and just point a few things out in the chart. Here's the new moon in Pisces. How do I know that? It's the moon and the sun together at the same exact degree. So this is the exact time that this new moon is for. What do new moons represent? Beginnings. What is this one in? Pisces. So it's kind of interesting. Pisces is the sign of the past. You've got a new beginning in the past, a new beginning about the past, a new beginning from something old. So this could definitely be about you getting a different perspective on the past, seeing your past differently, understanding what the past was for, what it all meant, going back to the past and taking it into new chapters, doing it differently, doing it better. Pisces also is an emotional one, an intuitive one too. So it could be adjusting your emotions to get over old emotional responses, old emotional reactions in order to move on, to do things differently and better. And I think that's what's going on. We're trying to work all the inside stuff out that hasn't been good so that we can bring everything together and move forward. Okay, so that's what is going on. This new moon, I believe, is what? Going to be conjunct Neptune, square Jupiter. I don't know. I kind of like that. I think this new moon is going to be a lot going on intuitively, spiritually. You know something new is coming. You know there's something you need to change. There's a lot going on. You're getting a lot of intuitive insights, even if you don't want to admit it logically. But even if you know spiritually, but are pretending you don't know logically, you know what needs to go next and where your life needs to head. That's happening there. Mercury also going retrograde a day before this new moon in Pisces, saying as well, it's important you go back to the past. It's important you do old things or pick up old things or make sense of old things so that you can move forward in a new identity feeling better and that you can understand your emotions. What else is going on? Maybe a few other things I can mention too. I actually like this new moon. I like this one a lot. What are the hardest things happening? I guess some of the other things have been going on for a while. Maybe things were a little bit chaotic right before this new moon. Venus would have just come off of a square to Uranus, which I think it's going to make in the next day or two, for those of you who are watching this at the end of February. But definitely could bring some really unexpected things in relationships and money. Things could be chaotic. Things would come out of the blue suddenly when it comes to relationships and money. But I think by the time we get to this new moon, March 6th in Pisces, there's a little bit of a calm that comes in an internal, spiritual, intuitive understanding of what you need to do next and of what you need to overcome from the past in order to move forward. I do think this moon phase, this new moon phase that's going to happen the next few days, moon phases last about a week. So from March 6th, the week after March 6th, I do believe things will be possibly, I guess Uranus is going to be at the first degree of Taurus, which could bring definitely some sudden or unexpected events. But I don't know, I kind of like it. I think things are going to be a little bit more calm, perhaps, as well at this time. What are new moon phases good for? I put this in green. They're good for beginnings. But the new moon, even though it's a good time to begin things, isn't always a good time to initiate. To me, when I think of new moons, I think of, like planting. I think a little bit of like planting a seed, but you don't see it sprout yet. You see everything goes on beneath the surface, on behind the scenes. So to me, if there's any major action that you want to initiate, especially from the past, especially about something old, to me, I do like to wait until the first quarter moon to do that. But I like new moon phases in order to prepare, to act, to think, to mull things over in your mind, and to figure out, what you need to do next. Sometimes I find acting on a new moon phase, sometimes it's a little bit too soon. So I think there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes internally about what we need to do to overcome the past and move on. But of course, I don't know if it's quite time yet to move forward on those until a week later. Okay, definitely a lot going on inside. Maybe we're feeling anxious with Uranus here at the first degree of Taurus. We want to break free. We're tired of old stuff. We want to move forward. Things have gone on long enough, but I think needing to let that work in you for a little bit while you figure some things out. Okay. All right. Maybe I'll go now to the next. Again, I told you I was going to break these up by the sign the moon is in. Just because I think that helps narrow down which days are going to be good days, which days are going to be bad days, what the focus should be. So we're going to have this moon in Pisces from March 6th when it has the new moon, maybe even a little bit before that, but the new moon's important on March 6th until we get to the moon here in Aries on March 8th. Now when the moon enters Aries, Again, we're still on this new moon phase, so still not a good time to act, even though the moon is going to be in Aries, the sign of action. Still not a good time to act, but it is a good time to think about how we want to act in the future, what our new identity is going to be. Again, we haven't stepped into this new identity. That's going to come at the next new moon, which is going to be in Aries a month after this. But it's time to think about, now that I'm getting over the past, who do I want to be in the future? Who is this new identity? Who is this new person? How am I going to do things differently eventually? Not now, eventually. That starts to come in March 8th through 10th with the Aries moon, formulating the new identity once the past has been dealt with. This could be a little bit uncomfortable these days, March 8th through 10th, an Aries moon. An Aries moon is always going to be a little bit uncomfortable for the next a year or two, about while Saturn and Pluto in the South Node are all in Capricorn and while Chiron is in Aries. Because every time the moon moves into Aries, it's going to conjunct Chiron and it's going to run straight into a square here with all these planets in Capricorn, because Aries and Capricorn square each other. So we could be wanting to, at this time, maybe things aren't happening super fast, even if we want them to. Maybe things are a little bit calm, even if we feel like there's a lot of things coming. There could be some frustration that could occur on this day, because we could not know how to be a person in this new environment that we found ourselves in since January with the moon conjunct Chiron. Also as well, because in order for us to do this new identity, become this new person, we could have a lot of responsibilities with Saturn and Pluto here in Capricorn. We could have a lot of things we need to do in order to make this new identity manifest. We could also as well want to make this new person that we ultimately want to become last, so that this is long-term, and you need to think long-term. You know, this is not small stuff that's happening. These are huge changes. So I think there's also some frustration happening March 8th through 10th. I'm realizing some things from the past I need to deal with. I need to go, but I'm not this new person yet. I am kind of, but not fully. And how do I do things to get to this part where I want to go? And how do I make this last? So you're being pulled in a lot of different places that could feel a little heavy at this time. Again, I know I've said this a few times. We're still in a new moon phase. We could want to act. Aries moon wants to act. Not a good time to do that. But to just take it slow, especially because there's not too many other big alignments that are exact at this time as well. So I would just formulate, think about what your life could be like in the new identity and how you eventually will do things if you don't do them now. Now I'm going to move on to March 10th through 12th, a Taurus moon. It's green still, because when I think, I try to do green for like being green behind the ears. You know, when you think of someone who's green behind the ears, you're like, maybe they've got a lot of potential, but they're still unstudied. They're still young. They still need to learn. So that's kind of where we are with this new moon phase. A lot of potential there, but not quite yet. I like a Taurus moon, especially under these conditions, a lot better than I like the Aries moon. So to me, March 10th through 12th would be much better than you would have had the days prior to that 8th through 10th. The reason why I like this Taurus moon is because the moon loves Taurus. That's one of the moon's favorite places to be. It's exalted in Taurus. So it helps stabilize your emotions a little bit and calm you down. Also because Taurus right now happens to be very well placed. We've got it in a trine with all these planets in Capricorn coming. Taurus loves Pisces. So Taurus got a lot of things going for it. May not have had a lot of things going for it last year, 6 years ago, but it's in a much better spot now. So I think what's happening is that we're starting to figure out, even if we don't quite know who we are and how to be fully committed to this new person in this new place, we're at least starting to get more of an intuitive sense on March 10th through 12th of who we are, of how we can progress slowly, bit by bit, step by step, in a more disciplined kind of way as well. And I think what happens here is we start to get a tad bit more, maybe not fully, but we start to get a tad bit more stability, confidence, and direction to our life, where we start to understand a little bit of what we need to do next and how we need to get there, and what we need to do in the coming days. Maybe March 10th, when the moon first enters Taurus, could be a little bit interesting because the moon is going to make a conjunction to Uranus, so there could be something, and I think I've got this at the time too, 4 a.m. Eastern. There could be something unexpected that comes up, especially because this is going to be the first time the moon's going to touch Uranus in the sign of Taurus since, last year? Could be something a little unexpected that comes up. You could feel very different. Definitely feeling like you're in new territory than you were the past few months here. But once that moon passes Uranus on March 10th, bringing some unexpected thing up, or maybe even energizing you a little bit, then I think you're going to start to come more committed and focused. Perhaps this moon, when it conjuncts Uranus on March 10th, sparks you a little bit, shocks you a little bit, so that you can understand what exactly next it is that you need to do and to commit to in order to be more stable, be more confident in the path you've already chosen. This isn't a new choice. This is something you already picked, and how to be more stable, confident in that direction, and to at least hold true, hold tight to it, and to not let it go. Okay, so I think if there's a keyword I had to give for this moon in Taurus, it would be, holding true to what you've already decided, being confident. You may not know who you are yet in this new world, but you need to stick with and believe in what you've got going on. Also, Mars is going to be in a trine with Saturn. Also, at this time, too, I really do believe helping you to commit to some life direction and to hopefully formulate ways to move forward better on that. Yeah. Maybe perhaps when the moon conjuncts Mars, I think that'll happen around the 11th, there could be some frustration. Maybe we want to feel a little bit more stable and a little bit more secure than we do at the moment. But I don't know. I feel like we're starting to realize with this beautiful moon in Taurus, we're getting there. We're getting there. Our life is changing. It's different. Ideally, it's more authentic than anything that you've ever experienced before. Maybe you want things to be a little bit further along than they are, but you're fine and you're making progress. Now I'm going to go here, March 14th, the first quarter moon in Gemini. I don't know why I made it pink. I wanted something bright, action-oriented, and I don't really like reds. I'm a huge fan of my pastels, my pinks, my purples, so I went with that color. Maybe it is kind of a purple. I don't know. It's like a magenta. So now we come to the first quarter moon on March 14th. What are first quarter moons? Action-oriented. Time to do things. As to where you were been frustrated the past few days, wanting to do things, wanting to act, wanting to make things happen. It was too soon. March 14th is the time to move forward on that. What are we doing at this first quarter moon in Gemini? Well, if first quarters indicate action, what is Gemini? Talking, communicating. So what do we got to do here? Because first quarter moons always happen in signs that square. It's when the moon here squares the sun. So what do you got to do around March 14th? You got to talk about moon in Gemini, your feelings. The sun in Pisces. What else you got to talk about? Well, you got this moon in Gemini. You got to talk about here. What else? Sun in Pisces, the past. You got to talk about old things. You got to revisit the past. You got to go back to old things, places, people. You got to talk about that stuff and bring that out into the open. And what are we talking about? Well, we're probably talking about the things that we were dealing with the past few days while the moon was in Aries and Taurus. So we're probably talking about who we want to be in our new life, what we see for the future possibly. Maybe even be talking about the things that are important to us, what we want to stick and hold true to, what our values are, who we want to be as well, that begin to come more into focus. And that's when things start to pick up big time. I think they pick up big time because to me, first quarter moons is when things start to get a little more action-oriented, a little more busy, things get a little bit crazier or build up in that way. Also because there's a few more aspects that start to become exact at that time. The moon for one on that day is going to opposite Jupiter. So to me, whenever the moon opposite Jupiter, it can bring up big things, big feelings, big emotions, a lot going on. Even though a moon in Gemini is not that emotional, but could be a lot of processing your emotions, verbalizing things. That definitely happens in a very big way then. This might also be big too, because around this day, Mercury is going to conjunct the sun. And whenever Mercury retrograde conjuncts to the sun, to me, that also does make a big moment too, because that's when your head and your heart start to align and you start to realize, wait a second, what you need to feel better, to move forward. You start to communicate about those things and your resolve starts to strengthen a little bit as well, where you start to unite all your senses, become more whole, more one, and align everything together. And so I think that's a lot of what's going on here. We're starting to communicate about what we feel inside, about the past, about what we want from the past, what we don't want, how we can overcome things, and how we can move forward. Again, conversations could still be confusing with Mercury in Pisces, a sign it doesn't like, and a square with Jupiter. Also, we could be feeling all these things and not knowing why we feel them. That could be a little bit hard. But I think there could be an intuitive sense about things and about what we need to do. And I think needing to listen to your intuition, even if other people think it's crazy, even if other people aren't as tapped into their intuition as you are, I think you just got to go for it. And to not be afraid to speak your truth, to speak some of the things that have been on your mind for the past few days, maybe even months, maybe even longer than that, and to let that happen, even if it comes out of nowhere as well. Okay. Mercury retrograde, also around that time as well. That's when Venus starts its square with Mars, March 14th. And you can see Venus here at 15 degrees Aquarius, Mars at 18 degrees Taurus. Not there yet, it's 3 degrees away, but it's coming close. So we start to verbalize what we're feeling. We start to talk about the past, things we're not okay with in the past, things we are okay with, things we want to do differently, things we want to do better. And that's all of a sudden when relationships start to realize, now that we're talking about it, oh, wait, I need to do something differently. I can't do the same thing I've done in my relationships. I can't do the same thing I treated this person. I can't treat this person the same way. I can't rely on this person. Instead, I have to do this with someone else. Or, oh, wait a second, now I got to change my financial situation because someone communicated something to me about this that now is going to require me to retool and refigure things elsewhere. So that's going to be pretty big, this first quarter moon in Gemini, where we start to realize, okay, we are not in this old life anymore. And it's going to become very clear because people are going to say things to you that are definitely going to bring different things up that you're going to have to work with. Again, what are we working with the Mars square Venus? We're having to readjust we're having to work with our relationships and our money to come with us into the future in a more stable kind of way. Yeah, Mars square Venus is interesting. Maybe I'll go a little bit more into detail on this, on why that's interesting to me is because we have this Venus in Aquarius, which has all these high dreams, big ideals, big goals, big wishes when it comes to relationships and money. When it comes to Venus in Aquarius, it's like the sky's the limit. I want all the friends in the world. I want all the money. I've got all these big ideas, even unusual ideas. And your Taurus says, this isn't about pie in the sky thinking. We got to make things real. We got to make things happen. And we got to figure out what can work, what can realistically we do together, and what realistically can we not do together. And if we want to work together, and if this is the goal and the dream, then how can we get to that goal and that dream in a practical kind of way, steady, stable, bit by bit, without upsetting the apple cart too much? That starts to come into play. And so that's when, working things out with relationships and money. Either I do want to work with you and we need to figure out how to move forward on this, and this is the goal and this is what we need to do or work out, or I don't want to work with you and maybe we need to see a different future, doing things in a different way. That could also come up there too. Mars and Venus, just talk a little bit more on this because this is the beginning of this aspect, which is a major one all month. It's very interesting. It can go one of two ways. It can be a little volatile. The reason why I say that is because Mars is the planet of action. It's also the planet of war. So whenever you get Mars touching a planet, especially by square, it can bring frustration, it can bring anger, it can bring fighting, it can bring arguments. You got Mars in a square with Venus, so could bring some arguments with relationships, could bring some arguments with money, could bring arguments with relationships over money. Do I think it's going to be that bad? Mars is in Taurus, so it loses its power a little bit. Mars in Taurus isn't that aggressive. So it's not as bad as it could be. So I don't want to worry, upset you all to think you're going to have these all-out blowout fights. I don't think you are, because Mars in Taurus is going to calm the fights down a little bit to be more practical. It's going to be a little bit more reserved, even if there are some disagreements. Your Mercury in Pisces is going to be a little confused, but going to want to be compassionate and sensitive and sweet and intuitive. So I don't think it's going to be super volatile, but I think there could be some things with relationships that you realize, I can't keep doing things the way I've been doing them. You may not like what I have to say. I may not want to hear what you have to say, but I also really don't want to fight with you about it. So let's try to work something else out. Mars square Venus too is also one of the main aspects that I do look for in synastry and relationships for sexual chemistry, sexual attraction. So it can also be very good for that way. Not necessarily like sex per se, even though I'm sure it can bring great sex for some of you, but to me is also very good for having chemistry with people, push and pull. If you want to think about the giving and receiving that can come when you get the masculine planet Mars, even though it's in a very feminine sign, touching the very feminine planet Venus. So there could definitely be a push and a pull that comes with your relationships most of this month, starting on March 14th, where there's a give and take. Okay, you give a little bit, I'll take a little bit, you work here. There's got to be a rhythm and a chemistry and a cadence to how you start to work with other people to retool and to rework things that could come into play. Okay, and it's all going to be because someone says something with this first quarter moon in Gemini that starts something else that then is going to create a whole bunch of other things that are going to be necessary. Could feel like a little bit of a challenge to bring the two together, to work and to do things with relationships in a stable way, to see some vision of the future that you like. Could feel a little bit, it could take some time and some work, but I think is going to be necessary. So I wouldn't avoid those things, and I don't think it's going to be as scary as it would be if Mars were in another sign. Okay. Now we're still in this first quarter moon. We're going to go to March 14th through the 16th when the moon leaves Gemini and moves into Cancer. So now what are we doing? We've said some things with this first quarter moon in Gemini. Maybe we need to continue to say some things. And what happens now? The moon moves into Cancer. Cancer is a sign of your emotions. It's a sign of your feelings. And we then need to get right with emotionally the things that have been said. Maybe someone said something, you said something, then it becomes a lot too internal. Well, how do I feel about this thing that you said? How do I get emotionally right with it? Maybe it's a little bit more of a private time too. Maybe people have to take a minute to work things out internally with the moon here in Cancer. It could also be a time too to give a more practical interpretation of Cancer, dealing with family matters. Also, that could come up. As much as I do like a moon in Cancer, the moon loves Cancer. It's eventually going to touch the North Node, probably more closer to the 16th, which could be very positive. Leading up to the 16th could definitely be a little bit challenging. That's because the moon, before it gets this beautiful spot in the North Node on the 16th, helping you to understand your feelings and feel better, the moon is going to oppose Saturn and Pluto. So as people have just said something to us, or we've said something to someone else that may have stirred us a little bit emotionally inside, and as we're trying to get right with that, we've got a lot of big things going on with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn weighing over our shoulders. We've got a lot of responsibilities. We've got a big change in our life that now we need to make that's coming. And I think we're starting to realize what change we need to make, what way we need to go in order to feel better, but it could just feel like there's a lot coming at you at once that needs to be dealt with emotionally, healed, and overcome. That could be a little bit hard. And so that's why on the 14th and the 15th especially, choices and balance are going to be key with the moon making these oppositions over here to Saturn and Pluto. Deal with your feelings. You're going to need to with the moon in Cancer, especially after this first quarter moon. Things come up, things going on with relationships, things were said. But also don't neglect your responsibilities and your other things that you've got going on with the Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn opposite it. So really needing to make choices throughout the day to recalibrate so that you don't get overwhelmed and act out in weird ways as well. That could be necessary. Also as well, I know this moon in Cancer is an interesting spot because the moon is also going to quincunx Jupiter and Venus too. I think around I guess if this could happen on the 15th. So man, it's like we're trying to feel good emotionally, especially after so much has gone on in our lives. And I feel like it's hard for us to find that emotional comfort that we want because there's something new that we're doing. Relationships are throwing things at us. Our life is changing in a big way. We've got other things we got to take care of to get rid of before we move forward. So I think we could just feel pulled in a lot of different directions on March 14th and 15th in this Cancer new moon, and needing to just try your best to find your balance, to balance your emotions, to make choices where you can, to take the load off in some areas, delegate if you need as well, so that you can start to understand more what is happening and what has happened emotionally in your life lately. Yeah. I know, this is going to be interesting. Very tense. I almost want to say, this just hit me. This could be like a butterfly moment, especially when the moon's in this spot for the next few months. Because this moon, because Pluto and Saturn are getting closer to the South Node, and so at the same time the moon's going to be on the North Node, Saturn and Pluto are going to be on the South Node. So the days leading up to the 16th might actually feel a little tense, 14th and 15th, a little bit frustrated, knowing something's got to change in your life, something's got to give, and maybe you don't want to give, and there's this push and pull, and what do I need to sacrifice or change or whatever. But there's something that I feel like when the moon comes over the North Node on the 16th, that even if you're a little bit frustrated. I do. I feel like there's going to be more clarity that's going to start to set in, more understanding of, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to change. And I just have to accept it and go in that spot. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll leave that there. I mean, I think we are. I think we're starting to understand we can no longer stay in the past, and that we aren't in the past anymore. The past is gone, as much as we want to pretend it exists. And I think everyone's at this point, just looking at a lot of things in the astrology, really ready to let bygones be bygones, really ready to let old things go. But it's just the practical matters. Like, okay, I get it. You're moving on. Maybe I don't like it, but I'm not going to stop you from doing it. I don't want to get in a whole fight. I don't want to rehash the past few years again, but I get it. Now that you're moving on, we still have to change things, you know, maybe like a divorce in some ways, where it's like, well, we already made the decision to divorce. We're not going to be together anymore, but your stuff is still over my place. My stuff is still over our stuff is everywhere. We just kind of just come over and pick up, you know, and it's like one of those things where it's like, I really don't want to pick up my things over your place. We've already divorced, and we're kind of on good terms, but we're kind of not, but it is what it is. So I feel like it's some of that too that's going on. Okay. Next, I'll go to March 16th through 18th, the Leo moon. Here's the moon here in the sign of Leo. Leo is typically a very happy and a very optimistic sign. So after a very emotional time that we could have just had a few days earlier, things were sensitive, things were heavy, even though I think we had an aha moment on the 16th that helped us to kind of straighten ourselves out and figure out what's going on. Even though things were a little bit heavy, the 14th and the 15th, I think once the moon moves into Leo, we start to understand a little bit more of how we can be happy with some of the things that have been said, and of how we can assert ourselves a little bit with this new reality of how we can do more things that we enjoy. Again, could be a little bit, there could still be a lot of things from the past we're trying to get rid of and we're trying to deal with, but I think this moon here in Leo is saying, okay, well, I got to move on. I got to figure this out, and I got to not be afraid to take risks and to move into this new space that then comes up there. Yeah. Still a lot going on emotionally, but I think we're starting to get a tad bit more excited about what's to come. Mars also is in a trine with Saturn and Pluto that day, so I think how we see ourselves is changing. If again, we want to think of Taurus as ruling our confidence, as ruling our skills, our talents, our self-image in some ways. Cancer also rules our self-image, but I think our self-image at this time is starting to change a little bit because we've spoken about some things that were important to us. We've processed them emotionally to realize that we need a big change to get right with what's going on, to transform a little bit. And now this moon in Leo says, okay, now that things have come out in the open, time to see yourself differently, present yourself differently to the world, to lighten up a little bit, to be happy with what has come and to not be afraid to move into it. Mercury retrograde also passed the sun, so we've already gotten these ideas. We've already gotten a little bit more clarity about what's going on, about what we need to do next. We're starting to align, so we're starting to feel better, like our mind, body, spirit, like we're all on the same page moving on. And Mercury is starting to come back here into this conjunction with Neptune, where we're going to check in with our intuition one last time to make sure everything's okay. All right, maybe I'll leave that one there. Let's go next. Now we've got March 18th through 20, the Virgo moon. Here's the moon in the sign of Virgo. It progresses through all the signs of the zodiac in order to get to a new moon. And also, just so you know, the moon travels about, 13 degrees a day, I think, and it stays in a sign for about 2.5 days on average. Moon, Virgo. What goes on here? We're still in the first quarter moon, so still action-oriented. We may still be doing things, initiating things, making things happen. And what are we doing in this Virgo moon? I think a lot of it could definitely be cleaning up a lot of things, especially with Virgo being the sign of cleanliness in a lot of ways, organization. I think we're trying to take all the things that we've talked about, communicated about, and to organize some of that. Also, it could be things about the past that we're trying to overcome, and I think we're trying to get a new set of daily routines with this alignment here that support our new identity, doing things slightly differently after we've communicated about some things as well. Definitely also with the moon in Virgo, a Mercury ruled sign could be putting some strategies and routines in place here that can support healthy emotional expressions based on some of the things that you talked about that needed to be overcome or done differently from the past. We may not know quite exactly what the plan or strategy for the future needs to be, especially because Mercury, the ruler of this moon, since Virgo is a Mercury ruled sign, is still in retrograde, is still about to conjunct Neptune. But I think we're trying the best that we can to plan and trying the best that we can to strategize, even if there's still more details that need to be worked out. I think, again, with the moon going to oppose all these Pisces planets as well during this time period, 18 through 20, it may also be necessary for you to listen to your intuition as well in order to figure out what to do next and how to organize your life, bring everything back down to earth, and move forward in a more strategic and stable kind of way. Okay. Could definitely bring lots of conversations, again, with the moon in a Mercury ruled sign, Virgo. That could happen. But again, I think these conversations need to be less about practical matter, well, need to be about practical matters, but need to be balanced with a solid dose of intuition in the process. Sometimes, too, could bring up some sensitivities that the moon opposite Neptune. I find that the days I cry the most are Neptune days. When the moon's touching Neptune, conjunction, opposition, square, Neptune just brings on the tears. You know, it rules Pisces, it's a water sign, it's very sensitive. So there could be some very sensitive conversations that could come up on these days. Maybe more so March 19th as well. But I think people at this time have started to accept what needs to happen, especially with the moon in Virgo, a very practical sign. And even if they are sensitive or vulnerable, are still willing to pick up the pieces, to clean things up, to figure out what's next, and to move forward. We still got this crazy Mars-Venus thing going on. So still retooling things with relationships throughout this whole process, still trying to figure things out now, especially in Virgo, trying to put the pieces together. You told me you wanted this, and you told me you need this, and I still need, how are we going to finally make this work? And I think we're starting to get a little bit more of a handle here on, okay, I get it. I get it now. You talked to me about what you wanted on the first quarter moon in Gemini. I don't know if I liked it, but I messed with my emotions the following days after that first quarter moon while the moon is in Cancer. So now I think I'm kind of emotionally okay with the things you said, even if at the time you said it, I was a little upset by it. Then the moon moves into Leo and you say, I kind of got a better perspective on it, a little bit more excited about it. I realize I got to take some risks, do things differently. And then we get here, March 18 through 20, the moon's in Virgo, and we say, okay, now that I've processed my emotions, I've dealt with it. Maybe I'm still sensitive, I'm still vulnerable, but okay, let's work together to try to plan things in a more practical way, to strategize, to make things happen, even if I still don't know what's going on, but I'm going to be a little bit more sensitive to your needs and more compassionate about it. Okay. Mars still, I like the Mars trine Saturn, Pluto, sextile North Node. I do. Practical. I may not like what you said, but I made my peace with it. I'm going to play nice. I'm going to help figure this out and work everything together. And then we get March 20th, full moon in Libra. Full moons bring endings, completions, Libra. It's about relationships, especially with this Venus-Mars thing going on all month. So that relationships are a huge theme where your relationships now have to change. You communicated about something that you felt. You processed it emotionally, more or less, or they have. And now this woman in Libra says, okay, we got to do things differently. We are not the same. I cannot relate to you in a relationship in the same way. So relationship chapters do come to an end. You could be feeling very sensitive and vulnerable at that time. The sun moves into Aries in a conjunction with Chiron. You could be a little worried. Did I make the right decision? Did I not make the right decision? Did I say the right thing to people? Was this good? Was this bad? We're moving forward on it. We're organizing things, but I'm still frustrated, but I'm still scared. So there could be some of that comes up on this full moon in Libra. Maybe with the sun conjunct Chiron too. You don't know how to do things. Well, I ended this thing with relationships, or now I'm doing things with relationships differently, but now what about me? And how am I going to do this thing with these relationship chapters being different? So there could definitely be some sensitivities about that. There could be a sense of relief in the sense that, I don't know if I would say the worst is over, but in the sense that you got a lot of things off your chest that have been a long time coming that you needed to talk about, and now you're doing it from a much better place. But there could also be some feelings inside too, where you're nervous about, did I do the right thing, and what do I do now, and am I okay? That I think could come up there. And how do I do what I need and stand in my truth of what I said earlier and what's important to me, while also working with other people, making sure they're okay at the same time. Still a lot of the same things going on. Could be confusing conversations, but with Mercury going to station soon, I think more understanding is starting to come. People are intuitively getting, even if logically they don't get it, even if they don't want to get it logically, people are intuitively getting what needs to happen. Sorry, just reading the chat for a second. Yes, yeah, someone said another 0-degree full moon. That's correct. So, and this is an interesting full moon too, because this is one of 2 Libra full moons this year. It's not normal to have two full moons in the same sign. This one's at 0 degrees this month. The next full moon will be the next one after this. It's going to be at 29 degrees Libra. So this is this could be just the beginning of a few conversations that you have with relationships on how you want to do things differently. And this could just be the start, where people start to realize, okay, we need to do things differently. And the next full moon at 29 degrees, about a month after this, that's when people start to get the idea, okay, now this relationship is really over. This relationship is really changing, not just pretending, not just kind of, but there's a lot going on. That could also mean that in between this full moon and the next full moon about a month ago, there's a lot more details to work out than maybe you thought there were as well. That could also come into play. Too. Maybe as well, that could also mean that you're not quite ready to get rid of or give up on old relationships quite yet. So that's also why some of them why we might need those 2 full moons in Libra, to get a better understanding. That's going to start here, but take a whole month about who you want in your life, how you want to work with people, what people are really for you and which ones aren't, and what you need to move forward on. And with the moon at 0 degrees Libra on this day, March 20th, we're realizing relationships need to change, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more that needs to change. And perhaps we may not even be able to make the best decisions about relationships until a month after this, on that next Libra full moon at 29 degrees, when we're going to have more of an idea now of what's going on with relationships, more clarity, and be able to make wiser, more mature decisions as well. Hopefully that helps. A lot going on with relationships, so that for some reason, I know we're just not finished. We're not finished with people this way. Or maybe we're getting rid of the past. I think we're closer to getting rid of the past than we've ever been before. Maybe we're trying to take old people into new chapters, and we're trying to see if we can make it work. Can I work with you in this new and different way? And I think that could be what starts to take focus. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So I think that's what we're trying to figure out in between this full moon in Libra and the next full moon in Libra. Okay, first for Venus. I already mentioned a lot of the other stuff. Okay. Yeah. Especially with Mercury still retrograde. I think we are trying to work with others, trying to be nice to the people from our past, but still not sure. Can these people from our past, even if we do something different, come with us into the future? It's going to take some time. Now we've got March 22nd through 25th. Sorry, I know I'm going a little over an hour now. We may have, let me see how many more. We may have like another 15 minutes if you hang in there with me. Now we've got March 22nd through 25th with the Scorpio moon. Again, this is a 3rd quarter moon, so definitely 3rd quarter moons are completions, ending things, stepping into things as well. What are we really trying to work out at this time when the moon's in Scorpio? Definitely has a lot to do still with relationships, especially with money. It can also have a lot to do with rearranging, changing our relationships and money in a more deeply involved kind of way. Again, moon doesn't really like being in Scorpio where it is here, so it could be a little emotionally turbulent. The moon's going to oppose Uranus, so it definitely can bring some sudden or unexpected things up as a result of relationships changing. Even if people were trying to play nice earlier, But I think it is a time to not be afraid to take things head on with this moon in Scorpio. I think a lot of what was going on after this, on the first quarter moon phase, when the moon was coming through these signs over here, we started to bring something into our awareness with the moon in Gemini when it comes to relationships that needed to change or to be different. We started to work some of the details out on some of that to figure some stuff out. But after this full moon, once we get to this March 22nd to 25th Scorpio moon, there could be things even more deeply that we need to figure out. We need to work out. We need to retool that weren't taken care of beforehand. And when the moon was in Virgo, that we need to just hone in on a little bit more. So March 22nd through 25th, the Scorpio moon may be a good time to pick one or two issues that weren't resolved a few days earlier and to really hone in on those, retool, negotiate, especially Scorpio moon's really good for negotiation and negotiate some things as well. I think a lot of it's just trying to figure out your new reality with people. Again, still feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the Sun conjunct Chiron. Did I do the right thing? Am I okay in this new space? But needing to be very vulnerable, being very sensitive. Not a time to pretend you have all the answers, not a time to push forward ahead, but really a time, especially with Mars and Taurus too, to kind of take it easy, see where things go. Don't shy away from the hard things, but don't be afraid. Don't shy away from the hard things. As well, and make sure you get things done, but to do it with more sensitivity, vulnerability, and patience than otherwise. Now we've got March 25th through 27th. We've got this moon in Sagittarius. Could start off on the 25th, being a little bit rough. The moon's going to trine Chiron here. We've made some big changes. We've gotten a little bit messy with people to figure out what's going on. In some way, I think we're starting to finally step into doing things according to something new that we've been wanting, that we've been working on for some time. I think we're starting to feel like relationships are coming with us. Not only do we lay down some of the preliminary plans for how our relationships need to be different, but we actually starting to live more of those and to go deeper with those things. And now we're starting to feel like, okay, the new is here. We're still insecure, perhaps, about some of the decisions that we made and what we're doing, but we're going there and we're trying to understand what's happened with the moon in Sagittarius, to accept it and to be okay with it. I think after we get to that 25th, on the 26th and 27th, to me, moon in Sagittarius could be very exciting. We could finally start to feel like we get to catch our breath a little bit and to loosen our shoulders up a little bit, to realize that we did the worst is over, we initiated things, we had some conversation we didn't want to have, we said some things, and things are moving on, moving forward. Still a little sensitive, but I think optimistic that could happen here. Definitely, I would say worst is over. That's because Mercury is stationing at this time, about to go direct. So definitely we're starting to get more clarity. Definitely the tides are starting to turn. Venus also going to be at 29 degrees Aquarius too. So we're realizing, yeah, we've gotten a lot out in the open. We've said a lot that we needed to say. We're getting more clarity on what we need to do to commit to something and to move forward. And we're starting to get a little bit more optimistic about it, even though we're still scared in some ways. Then we get to our third quarter in Capricorn. To me, third quarter moon is when things start to calm down also a little bit. The third quarter moon is more of the retirement phase of the moon, the reflective phase of the moon. Again, not a good time for acting and not a good time for doing things. I save acting and doing for the first quarter and the full moon. This is a time to take a step back from everything that's happened. And again, to review it all. Did I make the right choices in the past 20 days or so? Did I not? How do I feel about it? What can I do next to move forward? So that's when we start to reflect a little bit more. With this third quarter moon, happening in Capricorn, a lot of it too that we could be reflecting on is where we thought our life was going. Maybe now our life is going in a different direction because we had some conversations with people. We had to readjust things practically with people in order to figure some things out, even if there's still more that needs to be discussed. But maybe we're realizing, okay, now that so much has changed, how does my plan for the future need to change? How does the structures that I have in place, how do they also need to change as well? And how can I feel a little bit more stable moving forward with some of this stuff in the future? Definitely. Definitely could bring, when the moon crosses Saturn and Pluto, I think definitely that day it's going to start to sink in. Okay, this happened. Now I know what happened, and to just be okay with it, accept it. A little bit more acceptance. I think we were trying to accept what was going on 2 weeks earlier when the moon was in Cancer, but I think now it starts to sink in a little bit more of an emotional kind. Well, I don't know if emotional is the word, but now it starts, I say, to hit home just how different things are going to be on these days, March 28th. Yeah, Venus also enters Pisces too. I love Venus in Pisces. Venus loves being in Pisces. It's exalted there. So this also would make relationships a lot more understanding, a lot more caring. Not that they weren't before, because I think Mars and Taurus is really helping us big time to mellow things out. But I think this also is going to start to calm things down. A third quarter moon, Venus and Pisces, both are very reflective, internal, sensitive, compassionate. Mercury's starting to go direct. So I think the worst is over, and people are starting to realize, okay, this is happening. I've done what I've needed to do, at least for the time being. I just have to sit still. I have to wait. I have to be patient. I have to be sensitive to the needs of others and just see where things go. Okay. Then we get to March 29th through 31. The moon moves into Aquarius. Again, we had an old idea perhaps of our future, of how our life would go. We have to let go of that idea of our future. We have to think of our future differently, formulate different dreams. So I think we're thinking a lot about the future, what that means next, maybe even Aquarius, who our friends are, how we're going to associate with people as well, that we're trying to work with. And we're starting to, formulate. So much has happened this past month with people, and things were said, and now I got to think of my future differently and see a different vision of life. Yeah, that comes into focus. And how can I go towards this new vision in a stable way? Yeah, Mars at 29 degrees too, and Taurus is really helping us to figure that out. Yeah. To make everything that's happened like more real, I feel like. All right, then what we've got here, April 1st through 3rd, the moon then returns to Pisces where it was at the new moon. And a lot of that to me is finally about kicking the past, letting things go. If the things that were started, ideally in March 6th, you start to feel like they're ending, going by the wayside. You're getting different, you're feeling very differently about your life. What did I title this webinar? Next level consciousness. I feel like that's when it starts to settle in. Okay, like I said what I needed to say. I'm moving to the next level. Things are different. I'm overcoming the past a bit more so than I ever have before. I reached a big milestone moment in my life, especially with both Uranus and Chiron, now in different signs, never to return. I don't think, it's going to take a while, I guess. Chiron might be back in our lifetimes, but now that Uranus and Chiron have left those signs not to return, in the past where they were for a while, I think we start to realize emotionally we feel different. We feel different on the inside. We're a different person. Just in whether or not that's expressed itself outwardly yet, I don't think it has. Inwardly, we definitely feel different, and we're purging the past and healing from it to move on. Definitely a time with that moon Neptune to be gentle to yourself and kind to yourself, because sometimes can bring sensitivities, tears, that kind of thing, but very good to take time and space to yourself and meditate. Let's see. Mars also enters Gemini at this time and sextiles Chiron too. So as to where conversations may have been a little bit tense at that first quarter moon and aggressive, I feel like any conversations that you do have now about your feelings on these days, April 1st through 3rd with Mars and Gemini, are going to be more healing and more understanding and more calm as well. And especially with Venus and Pisces, I feel like people are starting to understand. I think the whole month people wanted to understand what you need and your emotions and didn't want to make an issue of things, but I think it might have been a little bit hard to work that out. And I think there's more of a coming to terms that could happen here. Conversations are easier, flowing a little bit more smoothly. Yeah. Also, with this Pluto and the South Node coming, I think there's finally that change in your life that you've been waiting for, that you knew was going to happen months and years ago, finally starts to kick in. Yeah, to me, this is the next level consciousness. Things are different space. You knew it was coming, and now it clicks. The last thing I'll talk about here is April 5th, this new moon in Aries. I'm just going to talk about this briefly because this will be the topic of the next month and the next webinar that I do. But once this new moon in Aries comes, you're going to see this new moon here in 15 degrees. It's going to be now about your new identity. Still some stuff from the past, of course, with Venus in Pisces, Mercury still in Pisces, but I think it's that point, especially with this new moon square the nodal axis, where you have to make a choice. Are you going to fall back into the past, or are you going to move forward? And are you going to keep choosing to move forward time and time again, especially when we're so close? And I think that's what starts to come here. You have to step into a new identity. You have to see yourself in new and different ways. You have to not be afraid to be different. You have to own it, and you have to make choices that support your further growth and don't keep you falling backwards. And I think the worst is over after this new moon in Pisces, after this month. The past is a distant memory. And it's just a matter of keeping to hold true and keeping to choose what you need, and choose the future that becomes big. And I think this can be a huge turning point that happens on April 5th. Whenever I see planets square the nodal axis, 15, square the nodal axis, I do. I think April 5th, this new moon in Aries, a major turning point where you realize my life is different. I need to follow my heart. I'm not the same person that I once was anymore. Relationships are way different, and especially with that full moon in Libra coming, maybe there are some relationships I thought I worked out at the last full moon that I didn't work out, but now that I'm more confident and new person moving forward with this huge turning point, I need to dot all my I's and cross my T's and move forward. Yeah, and this is going to bring a massive change in your identity, where finally you're not afraid, more or less, even if you're still fearful. Well, even if you're still uncertain of it, you're at least not afraid to step into and to open some new doors and to walk through them at this new moon in Aries. So maybe that's what I'll leave it at there. I could go through these questions if you want at the end, that I included at the end, but I know that I am about 15 minutes over, so I figure I'll just leave it to you. Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask? Please drop them in the chat, and I'll answer a few before we go. Also, if you do want me to go over the questions I included at the end of this sheet, or any of the other things I included, please also let me know. I do have important dates here, so you can see all the major alignments that occur. Usually this is for when planets change direction or change signs that I include in the important dates, and also the moon phases. And I decided to include this. I don't know why. I thought maybe it would be helpful about the major aspects going on this month. Mercury retrograde is the main theme. It's going to be conjuncting Neptune, square Jupiter, so you can kind of follow it that way. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just wait a few more minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Any thoughts they want to share? Anything you want me to clarify? If you want to fill out these questions on the back here, you can either do it, you can just answer the questions normally like you would. So you don't have to look at the astrology at all for these questions if you don't want. You can just go, well, what is your intuition telling you? And then write a few sentences. But if you want to look at the astrology, you can do that too. And I try to give little pointers, although maybe they're a little advanced about how you can do that. So I asked this question, what is your intuition telling you? It relates to the Mercury and Neptune conjunction in your chart. So if you wanted to apply this astrologically, you would pull up your chart and you would look at where Mercury and Neptune is by house, sign, and maybe aspect, and apply it there. Perhaps I should word this differently. Maybe I should give the degrees. What is your intuition telling you? And then say, look to where Mercury conjunct Neptune is at 16 degrees Pisces in your chart. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should work with that a little bit. But I'm definitely open to your feedback. If any of you have suggestions on what I could do to make these questions better, to make my webinar better as a whole, to make the worksheets better, just let me know. Christine said, I have a ton of questions on how this aspects my natal chart. I know I need to do something on that. I don't know what that is though, like a webinar on how to read aspects in your natal chart. Or maybe I need to do things by signs, a webinar by the signs again. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I definitely would say your cardinal signs are probably getting it a little bit tougher right now with the Chiron in Aries, the Saturn, Pluto, South Node in Capricorn. So my Aries, Capricorns, and Libras maybe having a little bit of a challenging time. Cancers too, but the North Node there in Cancer, I think, is going to protect them a good bit. I do like water signs for this new moon just because the new moon's going to trine it in Pisces. So maybe a little bit more emotional, but could help you to reflect, get in touch with your emotions in a positive way. What do I want to say about my fixed signs? My fixed signs had a hard time of it last year, so and maybe a few years before that. So I think my fixed signs are getting a little bit of a break. Could be a little bit frustrating with the Venus-Mars square happening in fixed signs this month when it comes to Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo. But compared to what my fixed signs have been through, I hope this should be a lot easier to handle here. I'm just dealing with the fat, the last few things. Hey, Colleen. Thanks for coming. When is a good time to launch new business? I always do recommend for sure the first quarter moon and the third, or the first quarter moon and the full moon as being the best times to do that. Leo to me is the sign of an entrepreneurial venture, so perhaps what do we have this moon in Leo, especially because it is on a first quarter moon phase, so March 16th or 18th. Not too bad of a time to do something like that. It's like, yeah, the moon's going to be in a yod. Yeah, I might probably go more towards the 18th for that March 18th, I would like. Oh, you feel like a fish out of water. That's funny just because Pisces, that Sherry said, my life is completely different than what it was a year ago, but I feel like a fish out of water. That's just kind of interesting because Pisces is the sign of fish and the sign of water, being underwater of some sort. So I feel like, Sherry, if you feel like a fish out of water, this Pisces new moon is to help you say, not anymore. You got to get used to where you are now and adapt. Either find a new body of water or grow legs or something. I feel like this new moon is definitely going to be the one to help you get there for sure. Might still be some more things that need to be worked out with relationships next month, but I feel like you're going to have way more confidence and you're going to understand just how much you cannot go back to the past after this one. Yeah, good to hear that you're Sherry, that you're a fixed sign and this year has been way more smooth than last year. Definitely should be. Yeah, I like that about the needing to adapt. I definitely do. I think this new moon in Pisces is really all about saying, look, your life is different. How can you feel comfortable in this new life? What do you need to do differently? How do you need to work differently with people in order to be okay with it? Especially with this last full moon in Virgo was definitely about your life changing in a very practical, physical way. This new moon in Pisces is saying, okay, your life is already different. Physically, your life is different. Emotionally, you may not be there yet. Your emotions have to catch up now to where your life is going. It's like our feet are walking, but our head, it's like a cartoon character. Our feet are walking, but our head is detached from our body or in some weird, and it's kind of like, okay, you got to bring everything together. And I think this month is when we start to try to get all the pieces from the past and bring them together and align them so that we can move forward and to start to get there more and more. Even if it might take us one more month before we feel better. But this month, I think, is going to lead to a major turning point where we have no choice but to move forward and to come to terms with it and to be okay with it. Okay, well, I may sign off. Thank you so much for those of you who stayed on with me for a bit. I hope this was helpful. We'll see how long it takes this to download to my laptop, and I'll either have this and upload it to the internet, and I'll either have this recording of this video available in a few hours, or if not, then tomorrow night. Be expecting it. My website should my store should automatically send you an email. It's giving you an update saying, hey, your listing has been updated. There's an update available to you. And at the bottom of the email, it should have a link to the information. What I might do is update this PDF, and then you can just click on the PDF, and there should be a link to watch the recording on that first page. So I'm going to update this link to something else if you want to watch the video again. Okay. Let me see if there's just any more comments before I go. That's about the full moon and equinox sharing the same day. It's going to be big. I mean, I know. I haven't thought about that. Someone asked thoughts about the full moon and equinox sharing the same day, just because the full moon is at with the equinox point being at 0 degrees Libra. These are big relationship chapters coming to an end, changing, transforming. It's going to take some time. We're changing. Our life is changing. We're accepting who now we're becoming, but our relationships need to get on board. Are you with me? Do you get it? It needs to register, not just with yourself, but with other people. But we got to figure it out first. That I think is what's happening, is that we're slowly getting our footing, understanding who we are, becoming more comfortable in our life so that we're no longer a fish out of water. We realize our relationships got to change. But before our relationships can fully change, we got to figure out first ourselves so that we can be more confident in what we do and decide. Cool. Well, that's all I got. I'll talk to you all later. I hope you have a good night or a good rest of your day, wherever it is that you are. And I'll see you on my next video. I will do the new moon in Pisces, so you'll hear more on that soon. Awesome. Have a good night. Thank you all for your support. Talk to you later. Bye.